welcome to the Box of Delights game channel. And we're playing Arkham Horror. In this video series I hope to teach you the game and also play through a full game so you can see all the rules in action. But in addition we're going to add in the Dunwich Horror expansion. There aren't a great deal of new rules, but I hope by adding this expansion we're going to add a little bit of variety to the base game. We're going to show you what the possibilities are for extending the game if you do dive into Arkham Horror. But do remember, this is a beginner's series. We're going to talk a lot about the rules and how the game plays. We're not necessarily looking for success, but hopefully Dunwich Horror expansion will help us address some of those frequently asked questions. This is the base Arkham Horror board. This is the town of Arkham, and we have all these other worlds over here. These are all the locations that you can go to and the streets that join them together. This at the bottom is called the Terror Track. And then we have these other areas which are kind of outside Arkham. So we have Outskirts, we have Sky, and we have Lost in Time and Space. So these are places that are outside the city limits. Welcome to Arkham. The year is 1926 and it's the height of the roaring 20s. Flappers dance till dawn in smoke-filled speakeasies, drinking alcohol supplied by rum runners in the mob. It's a celebration to end all celebrations in the aftermath of the war to end all wars. Yet a dark shadow grows in the city of Arkham. Alien entities known as Ancient Ones lurk in the emptiness beyond space and time, writhing at the gates between worlds. These gates have begun to open and must be closed before the Ancient Ones make our world their ruined dominion. Only a handful of investigators stand against the Arkham Horror. Will they prevail? And one of the things that the Dunwich Horror expansion adds is this new town, the nearby town of Dunwich. So on this board there's a whole bunch of new locations, new streets, and the Dunwich Horror expansion is going to add a variety of new monsters and events. We'll see those things unfold as the game begins, and I'll point out things which specifically come from the Dunwich Horror expansion. So let me first tell you what the basic premise of the game is. We've heard how there's this terrible creature, this Ancient One, who's lurking in this place beyond time and space, but is being roused by the opening of these dimensional gates across Arkham and Dunwich. Our aim is to close those gates or seal them forever in order that the Ancient One cannot awaken. If the Ancient One does awake before we've managed to seal those gates, then we have to fight and defeat this Ancient One. If we fail in this mission, then the investigators and Arkham is doomed. Once we've got our board set up, the first thing we'll do is place a token here on the Terror Track. And we're going to start the Terror Track at 0. Next thing we're going to do is set up the initial clues. Now we'll need 11 of these clue tokens for the basic game. And we're going to place one on every location here that has a red triangle versus a green triangle. So the red locations get a clue token. And for the Dunwich Horror we'll need 5 clue tokens. So let's get our 11 clues on the board. The last one there, Independence Square, and then 5 for the Dunwich Horror. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So that's clue tokens placed on each of these red diamond, these unstable locations. Next step is to choose your starting investigators, 1 for each player in the game. I'm going to play with 2 players, I think, so I'm going to take on the role of 2 investigators, even though I'm playing solo, and that's perfectly fine. I think a lot of people like to play with 3, but I'm going to try with 2. I like to play with 1 investigator, actually. That's my challenge at the moment, but I'm going to pick 2 investigators. We've got a whole bunch here from the starting base game and from the Dunwich Horror expansion. I'm going to take Ashcan Pete from the base game and Rita Young from Dunwich Horror. And then give one of these players the first player token. Next we get to choose an Ancient One, and I'll do this randomly. So this is going to be this Ancient One that's slumbering beyond time and space. Okay. And we get Glurky. Let's have a quick look at this Ancient One and go through some of its abilities and text so that we understand exactly what it is that we're dealing with during the game. So this is Glurky's name. This is his combat rating. And for the most part we can ignore this. This is only comes into effect if and when the Ancient One awakens. Likewise, this physical resistance here is a defense ability that only comes into effect if we're actually forced to fight this Ancient One. This part here on the left is important to us. This is worshippers, and this is active all through the game. This tells us that if we ever reveal a cultist monster, then they behave like undead and they move like stalker monsters. Now we'll come to that if and when it happens. Stalker monsters is not something you're going to encounter during the base game. It's something that Dunwich Horror adds. So the Glackies are a Dunwich Horror Ancient One. So the other thing that we have to remember to do, and we'll do this during setup, is place 5 Servant of Glacki monsters on this character sheet. Servants of Glacki that are defeated return to the sheet, and then they can never be claimed as trophies. So we'll understand what that means as and when we begin to play the game, but we must remember to do that during setup. The next part is this central part where it says Undead Servants, and again this is a power that's going to be applicable all throughout the game. And it says, while Glacki stirs in his slumber, which basically means for as long as he's not woken up, so throughout the whole game. Anytime an ally is discarded or removed from the game, draw a Mythos card and place a random Servant of Glacki on the gate location shown. Alright, again, we'll come to this if and when this event occurs, and for sure it's going to occur. Moving across here, this is the attack. So this again is something that's only going to happen if and when the Ancient One awakens. And lastly, and this part is really important during the game, this is called the Doom track. And this is going to show us how close the Ancient One is to waking up. So this is going to fill up during the game, and if we hit this point, then the Ancient One will awaken. So here's our Ancient One card here beside the board. And I've found these 5 Servant of Glacki monster tokens, and they're going to go on the sheet. Next thing we're going to start to do is set up these decks. One thing Arkham Horror is known for, as well as having a giant board, is having a lot of cards. So I'm going to place all these decks out, and I'm going to explain what they are as we do that. The first cards to introduce you to are these Investigator Cards. We have a stack of unique items, spells, common items, and skills, and these are allies. So these are the types of cards you'll see in the base game. Dunwich Horror adds to each of these decks, and it also adds to this deck. And one of the things you've got to remember when you're setting up for a game, it's not such a problem with the base game because you only have 11 allies, but for every game of Arkham Horror you play, you should only have 11 allies. And Dunwich Horror adds 5 more. So we've got to draw 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 and discard the others. So these are the allies we're going to start the game with. You can look at them, that's absolutely fine. But you must shuffle them up afterwards. Okay. So these other allies, these 5 that we've now discarded, are going to go back in the box. Dunwich Horror adds 2 sets of new Investigator cards, Injury cards and Madness cards. There's also a bunch of special cards, and these are from the base set and from Dunwich Horror, which adds some extra ones like Sheldon Gang membership, a rail pass to get you from Arkham into Dunwich. But these are the other ones: bank loans, retainers, etc., etc., Silver Lodge memberships, curses and blessings, which hopefully we'll see some of, but less of the curses. So we're going to place those in a stack there, and we'll use them if and when we need to. Finally, Dunwich Horror adds these 4 condition cards, which we'll place next to the board here by our Investigator cards. These are the Mythos cards. One of the phases of the game is the Mythos phase, and this is when some kind of event happens in Arkham or Dunwich. And these are the gate encounter cards. So when you're in one of these other worlds and you encounter something, this card will tell you what you're going to encounter. And these are all the various location cards, and they've each got different coloured backs, and they correspond to a particular area of the map. Now if you're short on space, one thing I like to do is just place these location cards near the locations to which they refer. So downtown here, north side here, Rivertown cards here. If you can find a space on the board to place these location cards, it does save you a little bit of space during setup. Or if you've got plenty of space, just separate them out at the side of the board. In addition, the Dunwich Horror expansion adds this Dunwich Horror deck, so we've got to place this on the board as well. And then the last thing that we kind of need for regular setup, for setting up the table area, are these gate markers. So we're going to give these a good old shuffle. A good way of doing that is to place them down on the table and just give them a bit of a wash shuffle. Dunwich Horror is going to add a bunch of these gates, obviously for the two other worlds that Dunwich Horror includes. And let's place these in easy reach of the game. The next thing we want to do is create our monster cup. Now I like to use just a big Ziploc bag and put all these monster tokens in there. The only ones that we don't want to add in are the mask monsters. And these spawn monsters, they don't go in the bag, so they're going to be removed from the game. Well, we're pretty much there in terms of setup. The next things we need to do is just set up our investigators, and I'm going to run you through that quickly now.